Welcome back. This is the third video of your preparation for the legal aptitude sections of the law entrance exams and your second video on reasoning. The last video focused on taking reasoning apart to identify flaws in reasoning. We learned to examine whether a conclusion was a reasonable one. This video is about building reasoning correctly. Building a correct argument from its various parts is sort of the reverse of what we did in the last video. After this video, you will have the tools necessary to arrive at correctly reasoned conclusions. Remember, in the legal aptitude sections of the law entrance exams, you will be tested on your ability to arrive at such conclusions. The main steps in testing for correct reasoning are, if you remember, reading the text carefully, identifying the conclusion, identifying the reasons presented in the argument, understanding the relationship between the reasons, and finally, examining whether there are gaps between the reasons and the conclusion. Reasons, as we learned, are the building blocks of an argument. In the absence of enough reasons or in the absence of a necessary reason, a conclusion will not be reasonable. We also saw how a conclusion can become reasonable with the addition of an appropriate reason. In this video, we will first study the reverse, that is, building up an argument. We will learn to arrive at a reasonable conclusion using the constituent reasons. This is also the first unit where we will actually start looking at some of the principal fact-conclusion model questions from the law entrance examinations. Let's start by looking at a classical application of logic. We have come across this one previously. Reason 1, all men are mortal. Reason 2, Socrates is a man. The conclusion that then Socrates is mortal follows from these two reasons. If the two reasons are true, then the conclusion that Socrates is mortal is automatically true. It is a reasonable conclusion. Let's take another example. Reason 1. The sum of all the angles of a triangle is 180 degrees. Reason 2, A, B, and C are the three angles of the triangle ABC. The conclusion that then the sum of the angles A, B, and C is 180 degrees is inescapable. If the two reasons are true, then the conclusion is automatically true. Let's look at another simple example. Reason 1. As a person increases consumption of a product while keeping consumption of other products constant, there is a decline in the marginal utility that person derives from consuming each additional unit of that product. If you remember your economics lessons, this is the law of diminishing marginal utility. Reason 2, Rachit eats 3 biscuits one after the other. He does not consume anything else. If these two reasons are true, then we have to conclude that the marginal utility that Rachit derived from consuming the third biscuit is lower than the marginal utility that he derived from consuming the second biscuit. Here is another one. Reason 1. The school assembly happens every Wednesday at 10 a.m. on the basketball court. If it rains, it is shifted indoors to the auditorium. Reason 2. On the first Wednesday of July, it rained heavily. We have no option but to conclude that on the first Wednesday of July, the school assembly was shifted indoors. Our approach so far has been intuitive. We were able to look at the reasons and instinctively arrive at the conclusion. But that is not enough. We have to be sure, and for that, we need to be more methodical in our approach. With that in mind, let's go through these examples again. All men are mortal, Socrates is a man. If these two are true, then Socrates is mortal. From our lesson in the previous unit, we know that we can depict these two reasons as switches connected in a series leading to the light bulb, which is the conclusion. If both the switches are on, then we have to conclude that Socrates is mortal. If one of them is not true, then we cannot arrive at that conclusion. But do we really need two switches for this? Surely there is a more efficient way. Here, we need to remember that a switch is useful because it has two states. It can either be on or off. Can these two states be used instead of having two separate switches? Let's look at the first reason again. It says something about the category of all men. It says that every member of that category has a particular attribute. Every member of the category called men has the attribute of being mortal. If something is true for the category of all men, then it is true for each member of that category. All men are mortal can therefore actually be written as if one is a man, then one is mortal. Instead of two switches, we have one switch. If one is a man is a condition that can only have two answers, yes or no, it can therefore be depicted as a switch, one that has on and off positions. Depicted in this fashion, if the answer to is one a man is yes, then the switch is in the on position. And if the answer is no, then the switch is in the off position. If it is in the on position, then the conclusion one is a mortal is unavoidable. If it is in the off position, then we cannot conclude that one is mortal. So what is the shift that we have made from our earlier instinctive approach to reasons and their conclusions? Actually, the major shift is that we have broken the reason down to look for conditions that, if satisfied, would necessarily lead to the conclusion. So if Socrates is a man, that condition is satisfied and we can turn the switch on and we cannot avoid the conclusion that Socrates is mortal. It is a reasonable conclusion. Similarly, the sum of all the angles of a triangle is 180 degrees can be written as if any three angles are the three angles of a triangle, then their sum is 180 degrees. The condition, if any three angles are the three angles of a triangle, has only two answers, either yes or no. If the switch is on, then the sum of the three angles is 180 degrees. If the switch is off, then we cannot conclude that the sum of these three angles is 180 degrees. And with that, we have come to the end of the first session of this unit. Continue learning with the next video.